The patience of the pious predecessors in seeking knowledge. Chapter 7. Stories of the scholars who gave preference to knowledge, being occupied in travelling, writing books, and benefiting themselves and others over marriage. Marriage is a very important sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it is encouraged to get married because it is a natural need for every human being. It is a way of continuing progeny and human life. The Sharia has commanded the one who fears upon himself of adultery and indecency to get married to keep himself away from sins. On the other hand, celibacy is not encouraged. A person practicing celibacy loses the comfort of his soul and body. He has to bear the difficulties in areas of eating, drinking, cleanliness, household duties. He is deprived of the warmth from a wife at the times of illness, being served by his children in old age. All of these benefits of marriage is more easy to let go of them by these scholars who gave preference to knowledge over marriage. I would like to clarify here, why did the scholars, knowing the importance of marriage and the greatness of such sunnah, knowing that there is no clear evidence proving that celibacy is better than marriage, then what made them disregard marriage? Even though they were not ignorant of the rulings of marriage, in fact they were scholars and they clearly wrote in their books encouraging marriage. The answer, Allah knows best, that it was an individual practice they chose for themselves alone. They made a balance between knowledge and marriage so that they preferred knowledge over marriage, and they never invited others to follow them in this matter, and neither did they tell the people that celibacy for the sake of knowledge is better than marriage, and they neither thought nor believed that what we are doing is more virtuous than what you are doing. What stopped them from getting married was the burning desire for knowledge in them. It was their love, connection, gathering and spreading this knowledge that they preferred knowledge over marriage. They could not separate themselves from knowledge, just like a body cannot be separated from a soul. Knowledge was a source of nourishment for their soul, as food is a source of nourishment for bodies. They considered marriage with all its virtues and rewards as a huge distraction from gaining this noble knowledge, and there is no doubt in the truth of this statement, because many scholars were not able to seek knowledge after taking on the responsibilities and being engaged with their families. This is why the scholars preferred knowledge over marriage. Next, I will mention some of the scholars who preferred seeking knowledge over marriage. These scholars remained patient on the hardships of celibacy. They gave priority of benefiting us with their knowledge at the expense of their pleasure. However, this is not an encouragement to a celibate life as some people may assume. It is in fact for the students to know from these stories the greatness of knowledge and how high they held it in high esteem, that they chose to deprive themselves from the comforts of marriage and its benefits their entire life, merely to increase their gain of knowledge and later spread it and deliver it to us. Thus, they gave us priority over having married life and children, and leaving a progeny for themselves. So may Allah reward them, the best of rewards, from us and the Muslims, and may Allah honor them in His paradise and gather them along with the prophets, the truthful ones, and the martyrs. Abu Abdurrahman Yunus ibn Habib al-Basri, rahimallah. Timeline: died in the year 182 Hijri. Lesson: he was a scholar in the Arabic literature and grammar. Ishaq ibn Ibrahim al-Mawzili says, Yunus ibn Habib lived for 88 years and he did not get married. The only worry of his was seeking knowledge. He took the knowledge of literature from Abu Amr ibn Ala and Hamad ibn Salama. His gathering in Basra was a meeting place for the scholars of literature and for the eloquent Arabs. Ma'amar ibn Mafana says, I frequently visited Yunus ibn Habib for 40 years. I used to write every day from his knowledge. These were the students of the past, spending 40 years with their teachers and some 20 years, others 10 years, and so on. The durations of lessons used to be the whole day, or at least most of the day, unlike today when the lessons last 45 or 50 minutes. Nowadays, the number of months to study are limited. The minutes of a lesson is limited. The students of today sit in the lesson without trying to understand the lesson. The lesson is free of discussions and titles of Maulana or Alim, are the desire of every student. Ma'amar ibn Muthanna held unto his teacher for 40 years. He himself was a great scholar of his time and an author of over 200 books. Qanabi says, I heard Imam Malik say, a man would frequently visit another man for 30 years to seek knowledge from him. Abdullah ibn Nafi says, I sat with Imam Malik rahimahullah as a student for 35 years. Imam Abu Nasr Bishr ibn Harith ibn Abdurrahman al-Marwazi Thumma al-Baghdadi rahimahullah. Timeline. He was born in Mar in the year 150 Hijri, and he made Baghdad his hometown. He died in the year 227 Hijri at the age of 77. Lesson. Amongst the scholars who did not get married, an Imam, a righteous man, a scholar of Hadith and jurisprudence, a role model of his time, Abu Nasr Bishr ibn Harith ibn Abdurrahman al-Marwazi from Baghdad, was commonly known as Bishr al-Hafi. He took knowledge from a great number of students in Baghdad and other cities. Among his teachers are Hamad ibn Zayd, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, Malik ibn Anas, Abu Bakr ibn Ayash, Fudail ibn Iyad, and other prominent scholars. He taught Hadith for a number of years, then he secluded himself from the people and engaged in worship and did not narrate Hadith. He became a pious and righteous worshipper, fearing Allah and spending the remaining of his life in piety and chastity. Imam Ahmed said on the day he died, and there was no one like him in the nation except for Amir ibn Abdul Qais. Had he got married, he would not have reached the level that he did. Ibrahim al-Harbi says, there was no one more intelligent and more careful with his tongue in the city of Baghdad than Bishr. He was never seen backbiting or gossiping about anyone. He was so intelligent that it was said that in every hair of his was intellect, and if his intellect would have been distributed amongst the people of Baghdad, they would all have become wise. Khatib Baghdadi and Hafid ibn Kathir says, when Bishr died, the people of Baghdad gathered at his funeral. His funeral began after Fajr Salah, and he was not buried until after Isha. Yahya ibn Abdul Hamid al-Himani said, I saw Abu Nasr al-Tamir and Ali ibn Madini at the funeral of Bishr. Both of them were crying a lot in his funeral. This was the honor Allah gave him in this world before the honor of the hereafter. Hafid Imam Dahabi said, his funeral started in the morning and he was not buried until night due to the crowd. Imam Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari rahimahullah. Timeline. He was born in the city of Amul in the region of Tabaristan in the year 224 Hijri. He is reported to have died in the year 310 Hijri. Lesson. Amongst the scholars who did not get married, Imam Mujtahid Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, great commentator of the Quran, scholar of Hadith, scholar of jurisprudence, scholar of the principles of jurisprudence, scholar of reciting, historian, scholar in grammar, poet, compassed with knowledge, author of many books, and one of the greatest scholars to ever live. Khatib Baghdadi and Yaqut al-Hamawi have given a very detailed description of his biography. However, I will provide a short summary as follows. He memorized the Quran when he was only 7 years old. He wrote Hadith when he was only 9 years old. He started his journeys to seek knowledge when he was 12 years of age, in the year 236 Hijri, when his father gave him permission to travel. He entered Baghdad after the death of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal in the year 241 Hijri, so he never met him. He travelled to various cities to seek knowledge and meet the scholars. He travelled to Khorasan, Iraq, Sham, Egypt, then he made Baghdad his hometown. He lived there until he died. Hafid Imam Abu Bakr al-Khatib says, he was amongst the great scholars. He gathered so much of knowledge that it did not contribute to any other scholar of his time. He was a Hafid of the Book of Allah, a scholar in its various recitations, well acquainted with its meanings, a scholar in the issues of the Quran, scholar in the Sunnah, well acquainted in the sayings of the companions and the followers, and those who came after them in the issues of halal and haram. He authored his famous tafsir and commentary of the Quran that such a tafsir has never been found until today. A great man of jurisprudence, Imam Abu Hamid Ahmed ibn Muhammad al-Isfariyini, said that if a man were to travel to China to get the commentary of Jarir Tabari of the Quran, then his journey would not have been sufficient. Imam Abu Bakr ibn Khuzaymah said, I have not seen anyone more knowledgeable than Ibn Jarir. Khatib Baghdadi says, I heard Simsimi narrate that Ibn Jarir Tabari, for 40 years, for every day of his life, would write 40 pages. Ibn Jarir Tabari's student, Abu Bakr ibn Kamil, said, Ibn Jarir Tabari said to me, I memorized the Quran when I was 7 years of age. I led people in prayers when I was 8 years of age, and I began writing the Hadith when I was 9 years of age. My father once saw me in a dream sitting before the Prophet ﷺ with a bag of stones, and I was throwing the stones before him. So the interpreter said, when he grows up, he will give advice on religion, and he will remove doubts and understandings from Shariat. After this dream, my father had the desire to help me in seeking knowledge when I was a young boy. Muhammad Qurrat Ali says, not a single minute has been narrated wasted in his life that was spent without any benefit to him or to others. Muwafa ibn Zakaria narrates from some authentic source that he was in the presence of Abu Ja'far Tabari an hour before his death. A dua was mentioned to him, narrated by Ja'far ibn Muhammad. He asked to present a pen and paper to write that dua. He was asked, even in this state, he said, one should not stop seeking knowledge until he dies. Imam Abu Bakr ibn al-Anbari, rahimallah. Timeline. Amongst the scholars who did not get married, Imam Abu Bakr ibn al-Anbari, a scholar in the commentary of the Quran and in the Arabic language, he died in the year 328 Hijri. Lesson. This great Imam prevented himself from eating all types of delicious food to protect his memory, and he did not get married to allow himself more free time to seek knowledge. He did not leave any progeny behind except for 30 books that he authored. The number of pages of these books goes beyond 50,000 pages. Allahu Akbar, how much knowledge he had preserved in his heart. Imam Abu Ali al-Farsi al-Fasawi, rahimahullah. Timeline/lesson. Amongst the scholars who did not get married, Imam of the Arabic language of his time, Abu Ali al-Farsi, died in the year 377 Hijri at the age of 89. He was born in a town called Fattah. He sought knowledge, then travelled and entered the city Baghdad in the year 307 Hijri and stayed there. Then he travelled to other cities and places and entered Sham and visited Aleppo and stayed in Aleppo until the year 341 Hijri. Whilst Abu Ali was travelling from one city to another, he used to sit in the company of the scholars and students would come to visit him. He would give answers to difficult questions posed to him. He was asked questions in Aleppo, Shiraz, Baghdad, Basra, and many other places, with so many questions that he authored a book answering the questions, and he named the book each one attributed to its city. For example, Baghdadiyat, Basariyat, Halabiyat, and Shiraziyat, each book being attributed to its place where the questions were asked. Abu Ali lived for around 90 years, serving the religion and its people. He authored in the field of Quran and Arabic a unique collection of books. He never got married. He did not leave any progeny behind him except for 25 books that he authored. There are indeed other great scholars who did not get married for the sake of knowledge. Amongst them are a great scholar of Hadith and Tafsir, Abu Yasar Abdullah ibn Abi Najih al-Makki. Hafid, Shaykh al-Islam Abu Ali Hussein ibn Ali al-Jufi al-Kufi. Hafid and scholar of Hadith, Abu Sariya Hanad ibn Sariya al-Kufi. Scholar of Sunnah, Hafid, Imam Abu Nasr Sijsi Ubaidullah ibn Sa'id. Hafid, a scholar of Hadith, scholar in the field of jurisprudence and a great reciter, Abu Sa'ad al-Saman al-Razi al-Basri. Scholar of Hadith, a great reciter, Ibn Khishab, Abu Muhammad Abdullah ibn Ahmed Baghdadi. Scholar of jurisprudence in Iraq, Abul Fattah Nasihuddin Hanbali, known as Ibn al-Mani. Imam Nawawi. and Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Besides these, there are many other great scholars who remained single and gave preference to knowledge over marriage.